of Jesus. Yeah, is that what we mentioned briefly? Huh? And then that is quite important because this is one of the very important pieces of information regarding the true church. Prophesied and coming from the East, and how do we back this up with the Bible? Bearing in mind, as I mentioned right from the beginning, the church, the true Jewish church does not belong to anybody. With that in mind, then we can search into the truth of salvation regarding the true church, to which we must be added to receive salvation. So the downpouring of the Holy Spirit, the early rain was, of course, in the time of the apostles. Very interesting is in Judah. Judah was considered, even today, as the east of Asia Minor, or east of the world at the time. You know that, don't you? Okay. Now, in the same manner, the latter rain was also put down in the east to establish the end-time true church. That is something quite amazing if you look at the prophecies in the Bible and the fact that the true church came from east itself. Isaiah has, had a lot of prophecies regarding this. If you look at Isaiah, how he prophesied and also prefigured the end-time true church coming from the east, it is quite alarming. If you look at Isaiah 24, verse 15, in that chapter 24, verse 15 of Isaiah, the dawning lights, of course, refers to east, dawning. The sun coming up, of course, from the east, isn't it? So dawning light means east. The glory of the Lord in the dawning east. Glory of the Lord referring to the Holy Spirit, the coming of the church. Glory is from the church. Remember that? Remember that? Yeah? We mentioned this, why it was so important. All these words come together, you can see, referring to the church, must come from the east. A verse for you to think about. Isaiah 41, verse 2. Who raised up, 41, verse 2. Who raised up one from the east? Who in righteousness called him to his feet? Two questions. And then two more questions in the same verse. Who gave the nations before him and made him rule over kings? Who gave them as the dust to his sword, as driven stubble to his bow? Four questions. The important point is east, from the east. Then you can see from, I'm just using verses which give us the message of east. Right? Rise up from the east. And this one is with righteousness, nations come before, ruling over kings. All this, of course, with spiritual significance. I'm sure we can explain that. You can explain this all. Okay? This all refers to the works of God through the church. The nations referring to people, holy people, the church with the Holy Spirit help us to grow. Right, and if you look at verse 11 of chapter 46, Isaiah 46, verse 11. This verse is quite interesting when I first read it. Isaiah 46, verse 11. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a far country. Indeed, I've spoken it, I'll also bring it to pass. I purpose it, I will also do it. This verse stands out, this bird of prey from the east. As if it's not very nice, bird of prey. But the emphasis is east. In this verse, if you look at it spiritually, it means power, capturing, starting from the east. some people say this could refer, east could refer to the, what is it, King Cyrus or things like that. No? But I think it is difficult to understand that. You look at that because this man is to execute my counsel, God's counsel. Must be something, must be some, agent, which is, or which would be able to please God. Who is going to execute God's counsel? The church in this world. All right? Understand? The church actually preaches the truth. I'm the way of the truth. No? I'm the life. No. Truth must come from the church. Glory from the church. Wisdom comes from the church. We glorify God through the church. And to execute it, the emphasis from the east. Oh. Let's look at some more interesting verses. 43. Isaiah 43. If you look at verses from verses 5 to 7. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring, your descendants from east, and from west, north, and south. Very interesting. This pattern, this direction, is also repeated in Luke chapter 13, verse 29. What does it tell us? What does this fact of the sequence mentioned in terms of directions tell us? Luke chapter 13, verse 29, right? If you compare this verse, Luke 13, 29 to Isaiah 43, verses 5 to 7, we mentioned just now, we can see east, west, north, south. If you look at the through the church, starting from the east, spreading to the west, north to south, that direction is quite clear. You understand? In terms of geography, It's very interesting. But it starts from the east. The emphasis I hear is east. Revelation chapter 7, verse 23 and verse 2 and verse 3. Verses 2 and 3. Spirit. Revelation chapter 7, verses 2 to 3. So all the verses were mentioned. Really, very, very, outstanding in terms of emphasizing east. That angel, of course, is the church. Isaiah 49, verse 12. Surely this shall come from afar. Look, those from north and from west, and this from the land of Sinim. If you look at the gospel in the New Testament, starting from the apostolic time, this verse is very significant, telling us the gospel right from the beginning, preached from Jerusalem, as we know, was to the north and to the west in the apostolic time, geographically. But then this must preach from the land of Sinim. That is a good thing. A very important message from Sinim. What is Sinim? The gospel shall be preached to far away, including the land of Sinim. Or rather, gospel will come from that. I think when I give you the notes, I'll give you some of the findings of people about seeing him. But of course, if you look at different people writing about this seeing him, they all have different opinions. But then if you look at it properly, some of them are all wrong. Because some of them, if we first see him to Egypt, doesn't make sense geographically. But from some sources, we can see clearly this refers to China. You have to study a bit on this. I think it's good. Well, I'll give you the notes. You can study yourself. If you do some research on this verse, you can see this refers to the people. At the time, this place, Sinim, was known to the Arabians or Syrians by the name Shin, or Shinit, whatever. It's referring to China. Very interesting. I don't think I want to spend too much time on these historical facts, but to me, whether this Sinim refers to China or not, it's not that important, even though you can see evidence proving this. The fact is, the true church came from the East. And if with all the doctrines of salvation, can only be one. To me, that is sufficient. This is in Africa, we don't preach too much of this, or even in other countries anyway. It's okay, you can preach. All right? But anyway, we will, when you see some of the notes I've got here, then you can see it's quite interesting. The book of Ezekiel we mentioned just now prophesies God's glory from the east, right? For those, some of you have studied the book of Ezekiel. You can see Ezekiel chapter 43, verses 1 and 2. Quite clear, isn't it? After he brought me to the gate that faces towards the east. Ezekiel 43, verses 1 and 2. And behold, the glory of God of Israel came from the way of the east. East, you see. His voice was like the sound of many waters. And the earth shone with his glory. And very interesting. You know, this was spiritually. Church from the east. Sound of many waters. Holy Spirit. Earth shone with his glory. Truth of the word of truth. But where did it come from? East. Okay? Now look at another thing. Lightning from east to west. I'm sure some of us could have heard of this. Many of the even preachers would use this verse. The true church is come from east to west. Using Matthew chapter 24, right? Matthew 24, 27. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, why we have to use this verse? What does it mean anyway? Anybody? What does it mean, you think? According to your own, inherited knowledge. One of us, anyone here has actually heard of, this verse being explained. Or somebody can use this verse to talk about the truth. The true church must be preached from east to west, right? Anybody else? Have you heard of this? You have. Can you explain a bit more?
So when Jesus
That means man, sorry. What is the coming of the Son of Man? Do you think? Anybody? What does it actually refer to? The coming of the Son of Man. Jesus. Okay. How do you explain if you use it to apply to the church? The lightning comes from the east, flashes to the west. So is Jesus. So is the coming of Jesus. So Jesus will fly from the east to the west. Oh, like that, is it? Anyone? So that means Jesus will come from east to west. Of course, you want to force yourself to explain, Jesus, the church is the body of Jesus and things like that, okay? Not bad, that kind of message. But look at what Jesus says. Look at Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16 to explain this. Matthew chapter 16, verse 28. Can somebody read that verse? I still don't know all your names, sorry.